And thank you for sticking around to Smart 24 TV, and thank you for watching wherever you are. We still drive your business here 24/7, giving you all key business discussions and bringing you up to speed with all that matters from the world of business across the East African Community region. Not only that, across the entire African continent, and also looking steadily at what is coming in from the global scale. Well, and our discussion here is still rotating around patriotism for sustainable investment and socio-economic transformation across the country. And before the break, we were discussing about labor migration, labor externalization. But before that, my question was entirely looking at how we can develop the feeling of patriotism and unity. And then Major retired Pollar, which is still here with us, telling us more about how we can put this, imbued this spirit of patriotism among the young people mainly, because they form up the largest number of Ugandans in the country.
Okay, how we build patriotism in the youth is not a one-point thing. I also hope at some point we shall mention directly an aspect of investment. Investment, because it also goes along. Now, some countries develop patriotism in many ways. There are jokes, and I call them jokes. Viewers, I repeat, they are jokes. There are jokes which try to explain how Israel and the Palestinians developed their patriotism. Some people say the joke is that you give a child food and then remove it. And then, very appetizing food when a child feels is going to...
They love chicken and rice or beef and rice.
Steaming hot. Then you pick it. Then when the child is crying, then you tell the child that the other party has stolen the food. So this child grows up saying, it's my country or the other party will crush me. So I'm just giving you a sense of how some countries are believed to have developed patriotism right from childhood.
Okay.
But some countries develop patriotism by education, by inculcating in school syllabus. We teach our children that we cannot exist unless we exist as a country. You can start it from nursery. You can start it to go through primary school up to university. But also there are activities that we do to show our oneness and love for the country. Clear mixing of people. Did you know that some people from other parts of the country still have even this myth that such and such a community in Uganda, moreover, eat human beings, and yet the other community also have the same feeling that this one eat human being. So you really see that there must be a practical need for us to get to know each other. At some point in Uganda in the past, or put it in Tanzania for example, there's what you call state school, secondary schools, where some students are deliberately taken for admission. You are removed from Lera to do your A-level in Umbarara in military school. Well, me, I went there, but not by state design. And then somebody from Umbarara is moved to Lera to do secondary school. They gazetted schools for that. So that in Tanzania over time, students don't look at other part of the country as alien, like foreign, with the myth that they actually eat human beings. It has worked in Tanzania. So, in other words, exposure of children at earlier age is a good thing, and it makes us integrate. course, now youth have also done on their own, for example, intermarriage. Youth have got across the board and gotten to know each other, intermarriage and all that, and that works. But above all, to develop patriotism, we have to do it not only in the spiritual aspects, but in the material well-being of the country. I gave you, for example, a state protection of a youth who is in a
Middle East, Bahrain, Dubai,
such a youth,
Qatar.
a youth where you offer counselor services. Counselor services means the youth gets in problem and the embassy is there on spot. Okay, that is called counselor services. Such a youth has a feeling of patriotism. So it is not a one design and it is not one way. Not like the other president says what you do for your country. I believe it's a concerted of activities. Both ways, right from the beginning. So if you offer counselor services to the youth who is stuck somewhere in Dubai, that youth feels much. So economically, as I already said, design programs that this youth knows it is purposely coming from the state. It is a design program to economically empower him, make his livelihood better, then that youth feels patriotic. So it is either way. As I told you, some countries have done it differently. But you can see it must crystallize into a feeling of oneness. You have seen, for example, in a game like football, if for example Uganda was playing African Cup, or even World Cup, if you stretch it to that, you would really for once see a oneness in the country. Even if you had a machine which would measure the mutima, the heart of Ugandans at that time, that machine will read that with all the political divide, that I am in NRM, that Mr. So-and-so is in NUP, the other one is in a UPC or DP. Even with that remote feeling that the achievement there might be tagged on the government or might be tagged on the party, still you feel that there's a sense of patriotism.
Very true.
Somebody feels, yes, it is our country there.
It is our country.
Of course, later there could be divide that somebody will claim it is our government achievement or the party policy and all that. But you feel that. So also, such activities help to build in the youth a sense of patriotism. So a sense of patriotism, if we're to delve, is not a one-off.
Okay.
It's a progressive stage of development and can be lost. In other words, somebody can carry it to that degree and lose it. So it is a progressive steps with a concerted effort with multiple approach and must be maintained. And that is why I'm saying even countries which were once patriotic, like Yugoslavia, lost it. And that's why I'm saying countries like Somalia, countries like Libya, which once had it, lost it. So it is a multiple approach from the beginning, sustained and must be sustained and can be lost if not well guarded.
Okay, now let's look at the sustainability of the investment space in Uganda. We've got local investors and of course we've got the foreign investors who normally bring in lots of money into the country. Now our level of patriotism here changes a little bit. We've got people who are entirely against local investors and they believe if we get investors from abroad or foreign investors, Uganda is going to grow in terms of industrialization, the manufacturing sector and all that. Now it takes us back to the sense of also pushing for our own. Just recently here, a few years back, the Buy Uganda Build Uganda was initiated as a go forward for Ugandans to start buying products made by Ugandans or manufactured in Ugandans, and in that sense also bringing together and growing that spirit of patriotism and love for our country. But now looking at our investment, the level of investment in our world, why do we still have bias on our local investors? Sometimes even with the policymakers, they will overlook the locals and look at the bigger picture, the foreigner.
Well, you're asking why we have the biasness in favor of foreigners.
Exactly.
Well, I will just investigate why, because personally I don't. So I'm not answering my question, or I'm not answering what I do.
Okay.
Because for example, how do I not do it? In line with Buy Uganda, Build Uganda, I have time and again done it. If I want tiles to put on the floor, and I'm sure the Ugandan tiles is good, honestly, why for goodness sake must I buy something outside? Of course, this is not to say Ugandan manufacturers should make poor quality, but if I know, which on many occasions I've known, that I want to put tiles on the floor, and I'm going to the shop to buy tiles, and I have Ugandan tiles, I would definitely buy Ugandan tiles. Now, as to why these people sadly so, you mentioned even policymakers. I'm just trying to read their mind, because that is not what I do. Why they do it sometimes is that they find procurement loopholes they personally benefit when they buy from abroad than in Uganda.
Okay.
Because if that was what he's buying for his house, where he's not going to get the loopholes where personally benefits what you call a jawulu, he would not do it, he would buy the Uganda. So some of them get that procurement loopholes in foreign purchases than the Uganda. But of course, they will not say that. The presenting issue to them is that they would claim it's better quality. And yet there would be indicators, measurable indicators, to show that they are either same quality or even Uganda is of higher quality. So one reason is that they want to exploit procurement loopholes so that they get a job.
Okay.
But also there are some people I think I've read, like in Kenya and Jonjo, is it called Jonjo or Jojo? Some people really believe that something foreign is good for them, which I think is a mindset which borders sickness.
It's original. It is.
Yeah, I remember there's a
durable and all that.
A renowned Kenyan politician who they used to say even the pen he must get from abroad, even the water, even the coffee, even whatever, he would think so. So you also have that aspects of some people thinking that the foreign thing is more better to him. And therefore this brings a lot of challenges in the Uganda investment procedure. But for me, I would think that you need both investments. You need both foreign investment and national investment or domestic investment. And it is well catered for in the law to provide equality. And this now shows, for example, in tax benefits, the law provides clearly, because originally the beginning was that we seem to be favoring foreign investors in terms of tax holidays, in terms of this. Now the qualification is uniform. You qualify for this, you get it. You qualify for this, you get it. It is pronounced under the law. So, because the presumption is that foreign investors are bringing in bigger capital, that the ordinary Ugandans will not raise that capital.
Okay.
And that is why there's a protection or prohibition in law as to areas that a foreign investor should go in and areas that are preserved for local investors. So the two could work symbiotically, because even this one buys from the other one buys from the other sells to the other. It should work in a symbiotic way and well guarded and protected under the law.
Okay. So when you look at our investment, now it takes me back to the level of sustainability. How do we sustain our local investors? Because they are now competing with foreign investors, and it's not something that is very easy to go by if you look at the kind of competition they are facing. How do we help them to at least ably stay in that space of investment?
How we can help our local investors? One is by telling them to produce quality goods and services, because you cannot hide under being a national, yet you're producing poor quality. They won't save you. And therefore, a competitiveness. If, for example, sugar is being imported honestly from Brazil and cost in the supermarket 4,000 kilos, and our sugar in Uganda cost 5,000 kilos, that will pose a challenge. They need to examine, where is this cost coming from? Okay, where is this cost coming from? Because you are not going to whip. There's no such a chief whip who will whip Ugandans into buying a cheap, an expensive Ugandan sugar, as opposed to the foreign. So I've talked of quality, I've talked of competitiveness in terms of price, but I also want to say, to sustain them, we need a conducive atmosphere. Are they producing in a way where they have roads, where they have infrastructure, where they have all this that enable them to produce? What is that protective and promotional aspects that promote them? The other aspect is those who deserve capital. Are there lawful investment banks? Lawful investment banks set aside by government to encourage such investors to get capital, so that they get the capital and they continue. And then, of course, administrative costs like tax regimes. Do you have tax regimes which is not prohibited? Okay, we have talked of tax base as opposed to tax depth. Do we work in a way that we expand areas of taxation rather than deepening the taxation on this one person? Okay, so there's a difference between expanding the base for taxation in the country than deepening to tax this other one person more. So all these are factors that will lead us to sustain our local investors in the country. I've not listed all of them.
Okay. And of course, as we continue to look at the socio-economic interaction of most of the Ugandan people, there's always something that always triggers my attention normally, besides the patriotism. Looking through Kampala as we continue to move, when you're moving on a normal day, on a normal business day, you get to realize that there are also some other social factors that we've not taken too seriously than the other nations are taking. For example, you look at the issue to do with the way we manage waste in the city. Look at the disposal of rubbish, garbage, name it, in the city. Still, that hits our kind of patriotism for social development in Uganda. How about that? Is it something that we can address or tackle on a personal level, or it needs some serious enforcement from the government?
That one is part of patriotism, seriously. It's patriotism, it is really in the heart of patriotism, because if you can think that for me to drop this polythene bag
on the highway,
which will affect the environment and will affect all of us, that is a patriotic thinking. But if you think I drop this polythene bag, even if it affects the environment, is none of my business, that is being non-patriotic. So it calls on individuals. It is actually a test, an indicator, whether a person is asleep or awake about patriotic elements. Those small ingredients touches the nerves and the scent of patriotism. But at the end of it all, if it is not done, then you throw it back to the governors, those who have the mandate, the public office to govern, whether the government in power or the city in authority or the local government in authority. But it should have started with us. It is actually a test and indicator for patriotism. And I personally really take it serious. Sometimes I have to carry my polythene bag that I've touched in the car up to home, so that I properly put it in the garbage pit in my home, because I know in my case every Tuesday the garbage people pass at my gate. I pay money and I'm registered, so that every Tuesday the garbage lorry comes. So I carry all my garbage from town up to home, so that I put it in the garbage pit, and on Tuesday the garbage people will take it. If you take it to an extent, like in Rwanda, I've been to Rwanda, either entering the country itself or passing on transit. Oh my God, those guys have enforced it. Do you know you are in a Brussels airline, which is for the Belgium, and the air hostesses are white people? If you see the way the white ladies are begging people who are getting out never to get out with a polythene bag.
In Kigali.
In Kigali, the white hostesses are nearly kneeling down to passengers who are exiting from Kigali. Even white passengers, they have come to visit Kigali. I don't know what MOU they have had with the airline, that should any passenger get out with your polythene paper, tomorrow you will not land in Rwanda. And we seem not to be serious about it here. So sometimes this patriotic element of patriotism needs to be enforced. You need to polish it. You need to be a policeman of sort.
Recently, Honorable Beatrice Anywa did mention that apparently most of the
What did she mention?
She says that most of the airlines across the African continent that land in Uganda, they post off their polythenes in our country. And it's like we're okay with it.
I'm not aware about that. And if they do, what is the disposal method? Because if they do, it should be an institutional framework through an MOU, through a memorandum of understanding with the relevant authorities for the disposal
of these.
For example, if they were to do with the Entebbe local authorities, then they would have signed an agreement with the Entebbe local authority where they have methods of doing with payments there too. So that it is not scattered but disposed of scientifically and procedurally. And each party meets the cost. If the airline is to meet the cost for that, then they'll do it. So I don't know what how the minister sees it, whether they just come and throw it, or they do what.
It looks like it's very free for them
to throw.
For them to.
That is very unfortunate.
Besides other airlines, now you've mentioned Kigali Airlines. That means they do know in Kigali you can't at the airport. Then are we supposed to also set those standards? What did
we should. We should not only set it in Entebbe, but even in Lira or even in Kotido. In other words, I'm saying, first we started by saying, by doing that and having no due consideration that it affects the country, you are not being patriotic. So I said that some of these patriotic elements, you need to be polished. You need a policeman to do it. And that's why I'm praising that the Rwandan way of policing it. I've gone by road to Rwanda as well. I once had a entire school all boys reunion, a party in Rwanda, because we happened to have the president of Rwanda is an OB of Ntare and the president of Uganda. So we had a function in Serena. And I went with 6 buses of all boys. My God. To enter the 6 buses in Rwanda, whom I had taken because we had a dinner in Serena in Rwanda. they check the bus like they're checking for a bomb, but they're checking for Kavera.
Not leaving the place dirty.
They checked the bus and they pleaded with us. Moreover, each of us had invitation card from the president. Each of us had an invitation card directly from Kagame. But the way they checked the bus for Kavera,
okay.
And yet we, being a guest to the president, we almost had immunity.
True.
We were almost enjoying presidential or diplomatic immunity because we are a guest, state guest, and we are guests to the president.
Especially right.
Each of us had a card, not even jointly. Each of us had a card. But you can be sure the checking. So in other words, some of this patriotic thing, you don't take it for granted. You need to police it. You need a policeman to do it.
All right. And Major, we shall be returning in our last part of our discussion where we'll be looking at the sustainability of our economy now and how we can really take part of it. And to all the viewers out there still watching Smart 24, keep it here as we head into the break. The Policon, that's